I've worked at the same grocery store for the last 4.5 years of my life. Of course, I've seen some pretty crazy people come in and whatnot, but this absolutely takes the cake for me. It was a regular work shift for me as a cashier, with me working short amount of hours, whereas I was 16. I intended to keep the same work schedule because every week I liked the days that I worked and it kept me on the ball being in school and whatnot. Since I worked during the day on weekends, I would usually see the same few regulars, which was not uncommon for me at all. One customer usually stood out to me though. I never caught his name, but it was an older man, maybe in his late 60s I'd say. This same customer would come into my register lane every single week on the same day around the same times. Not only that, but he would buy the exact same groceries every week and would make me bag them to his liking. Honestly, I never thought twice about this old man because he seemed pretty harmless and just super friendly. I was completely wrong. This one specific shift is where things went insanely south. I was on my register and I see him walking over per usual, settling his things on the belt. The normal conversation and whatnot then asks me when I go on my break. Not only did I really not know for sure, but even if I had known, I would not give that information out to this stranger. I have something in my car for you. You should come out on your break and take it. I will wait for you. Oh, I have no idea when I'll be going on my break. It could be hours. That's okay. You know what? I have an even better idea. I will go get it for you and bring it in here. Now I really did not know how to take this situation, so I notified my manager quick about the interaction and to keep an eye out for him. Lo and behold, the customer comes right back in 15 minutes later with a manila folder in his hand. This customer stands right at the end of my lane and watches me for over an hour, just standing there, waiting for me, not making small talk with other customers or even breaking eye contact. The manager has been watching him and finally pulls him aside and says it's time for him to leave. The customer explains he has something for me and instructs my supervisor to give it to me when possible. My manager says yes of course and he leaves. Mind you, my girlfriend is currently working in a separate department and is notified and she comes over. I will never forget what I see next while I was still cashiering. My manager and my girlfriend open up the manila folder and the color of their faces immediately drain. I see them shuffling through tons of papers until finally my girlfriend snatches out the folder and rips it in two. My manager pulls me off the register and tells me what he had left. It turns out, he had hundreds of written sexual poems for me and his deceased mother combined. This man had been obsessed with me. I felt sick to my stomach, and I wanted to throw up immediately. Later on, the police come in and ask me some questions about the incident, and I give them my statements and whatnot. They eventually found him on our camera from earlier that day, and they had enough evidence to give me the option to file a restraining order on him, as well as legally banning him from our store. The police eventually contacted him, and when they asked him to confirm what he had tried to give me, he instantly hung up after talking for some time with the cop. I haven't seen this man since, thank God, and I never plan on it. Back in 1989-1990, I worked for a large drugstore chain. I was about 19 years old, female. As I was a college student, I worked the closing shift, which usually ended at 9 p.m. After facing the shelves and counting out the cash drawers, I got out between 9:30 and 10 p.m. My home college was about 25 minutes away, so I would drive this rather desolate highway home. It's busier on the road during the day, but nearly no one on it at that hour. I was driving and I saw police lights in my rear view mirror. Thinking back on it, I noticed something was wrong with the lights, but it wasn't clear enough to really register. I pulled over, but that little voice that keeps you safe was telling me to proceed with caution. I rolled down my window about 3 inches and waited. The cop approached me and I was still racking my brain with what I could have done wrong, probably speeding. The cop walks up to my car but kind of angles himself, so I had to really turn around in my seat just to see him. He was in his mid-30s, clean cut and wearing a uniform. He asked me to roll my window down further, and I did. Another inch. Something about him was just wrong. So wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it. But when he tried to open my door, I knew it was wrong. I kept asking him why he tried to pull me over, and he said I needed to step out of the car. I told him I would, but he needed to call backup. He said I needed to listen to him. I told him again that I would, but I wanted someone else there and that I was uncomfortable. He started pulling my door handle harder. I don't know what that was going to accomplish, and beating on my window. I was scared for my life, especially now because I don't know if this guy was a real cop or an imposter. He started screaming for me to get out of the car now. He tried reaching through the window to grab me, any part of me. As he kept hitting my window, I'm screaming and crying and had always been such a rule follower that I didn't know what to do. Finally, I gathered all my courage and gunned my car. Back then, I drove an older Mustang, so that thing took off like crazy. I'm pretty sure I ran over his foot in the process. No regrets. Once I got back to the dorm, I told my boyfriend what happened. I was afraid to call the police because I was sure they were going to arrest me, so he called them. They came out to the dorm and took a report. From what I remember, I wasn't the first young woman this had happened to. And yes, it was a fake cop. I'm so grateful that I listened to that little voice in my head that told me not to roll the window down and to instead take off. It was only years later that I realized that this guy had almost certainly been watching me from when I got off work. How else would he know that a car had a young female occupant? From what I understand, they never caught him. I just hope that he walks the limp and rethinks targeting young women on empty highways.